Okay, looks like I'm going to get through the three I wanted to today. Yay! So, this is chapter 14 of Phoenix Incandescent, and this one's called Breakthrough. Charlotte sat in the window seat on the loft in the library and stared out at the sunset as she clenched and unclenched her hands together in her lap. 2 weeks had passed and she lost control. Her sweater dress lay singed and stained and forlorn in the bottom of her hope chest, nestled between the boots. The roses from that night were tucked away in the pocket that hadn't burned. She flipped through the pages of the book of poetry that Beau had given her last week. He had sweetly, yet firmly, remained steadfast at her side the last couple of weeks. He didn't fly away for separate training anymore, and he greeted her with a smile even when she didn't smile back. Charlotte didn't see what the purpose of smiling was anymore. There had been no word from her parents, and no message from the fairies. There had been no more kidnappings. The Megard was monitoring magical activity and travel, but life had resumed for most Megani. She rubbed her toes against the bookshelf. She did have Beau, but the building romance between them had cooled after she lost control during the dance. She took a deep breath and wiped the errant tear from her eye. How were they ever to have a physical relationship if she couldn't trust herself? She had poured every minute of her time since then into training, for the exhaustion after intense physical activity seemed to help her control the heat that coursed through her body. Most of the time the heat rippled gently under her skin, but sometimes it roared and stung. Those were the times she accidentally burnt items. Anger and fear were heat triggers. Apparently, so was physical attraction. Charlotte? She looked up to see Chime standing before her with a cup of tea. Sorry, I was thinking. You do too much of that lately, Chime said gently. She offered the cup to Charlotte. Peppermint. Thank you. Charlotte swung her legs around so Chime could sit on the window seat. Any news tonight? She whispered, though she wasn't sure why she even bothered to ask anymore. Chime shook her head no. Not that kind, but Zorak is calling a meeting. He and Tobias believe they have found something. Found what, Chime? Something about the kidnappings. She shrugged. They won't give any details until we're all gathered. Charlotte handed the empty teacup back to Chime. When's the meeting? As soon as everybody gets there. Charlotte hurried down the circular staircase and jogged to the meeting room, which was already bustling with bodies and talk and excitement. Rows of chairs took up the middle of the room, and a podium stood in one of the front corners. Charlotte grabbed a chair from the end of a row and settled into one of the back corners of the room. There was no way she wanted to risk somebody accidentally bumping into her. Zorak stood in front of the room with Joseph and Tobias, Joseph's youngest son. Tobias had grown up meddling with electronics of both Dane and Weaver making. A large portion of the back wall was now covered with a screen that looked like a panel of glass. You have useful children. Zorak slapped Joseph and Tobias on the shoulder. I almost want to have an offspring now. I thought they were just trouble. Joseph laughed good-naturedly. Well, don't get in a hurry, my centaur friend. In the meantime, you may borrow any of my children now and then. Lodestar entered the room and headed straight to Zorak. Basil and a few more hobs drifted in. Beau nodded at Charlotte when he entered and sat down in the chair nearest her. He patted the chair next to him. She smiled but shook her head no. Talk later, he mouthed. She nodded yes and smiled tentatively. They needed to talk, but more importantly, she needed to learn to control herself around him. Okay, if everyone could take a seat, please, Joseph called out. That's right, it's time to begin. Cease the chit-chat and sit. He waited until the room was quiet before he sat down in the front row. Zorak cleared his throat. Now, I know we have been over these reports time and time again. The room erupted with groans of disapproval. This time we have the solution, Tobias shouted over the groans. I've built a screen large enough for us to look at everything together. A lot of hobs shook their heads in disbelief. Basil wrapped a stirring spoon on the back of the chair, and the room quieted. Today I want to focus only on the locations of the kidnappings we know about. The last 3 weeks I have been in contact with all Megani to double-check the locations and numbers. Tobias has been so kind as to enter the information. He nodded at Tobias. It's also been color-coded by types of Megani, Tobias added. He crossed to the brand-new computer that sat in front of the other front corner of the room. Charlotte blinked. A computer in the castle. Times were changing. The screen lit up with the map of the country that was covered in colored dots. Charlotte sat forward in her chair. Is it just me, or do the kidnappings seem to be grouped in circles? Charlotte asked. You are correct, Zorak confirmed. The closest center is near area your mother managed to escape. He tapped the circle. It looks like she got away just in time. Although most of them were kidnapped again anyway, one of the Hobbs grumbled. But we wouldn't be where we are now if that didn't happen, another pointed out. So what do we do now? Bo asked. Does the McGuard know? I can let Barnabas know what we found and see what he knows, Basil offered. Right now, please, Zerok commanded. Basil left the room with a pop of air. Tonight and tomorrow, Lodestar and I will assemble a team which will leave for this spot the day after. Zerok knelt on the floor. I need to know if anybody in this room wants to go along. He looked slowly around the room. I will also gather a team to protect the castle. Let me know if you want to serve in that way. I'm going with you, Bo called out. I will represent the Bronze Eagles. The Hobbs are ready to defend the castle, Joseph inserted. We've been working on new protection measures and magic. I will remain here to protect the castle as well, Wilhelm added. I will contact my parents after the meeting. They will send my sister Evangeline with your team. She is young, but she has a knack for fighting. I will attempt to locate Faunus, Lodestar offered. Do we really need to contact him? Joseph argued. He's unreliable and cocky and rude and... I promised him that we would, Zerok said. He may be all the things you said, but he's also committed to finding out what happened to his children. He's a decent fighter, and he can be very helpful in the wild. We may have great use of him. We have a responsibility to everybody, not only the Magani we like, Lodestar scolded. So you've informed the giants, then? Joseph asked sarcastically. What about Triton? Are you okay, Father? Chime asked. I'm fine. Joseph straightened his suit. I'm a little nervous, that's all. 2 attacks in the castle are more than I thought I'd ever see. I will contact the giants, Red offered, though I can tell you now that they will not send anybody. And I will contact Triton, Zerok said, or rather, I'll have one of my brothers contact him. Basil popped back in the room with Alcott. I will represent the dwarves and the McGuard, Alcott bowed. How does he get here so fast? Charlotte leaned forward and whispered to Bo, do Hobbs have that kind of range? He used a portal, Bo whispered back. What does the McGuard say? Zerok asked. I would like to take a copy of the information to my father this evening so he has time to take it to our leaders. Alcott took a seat. To be perfectly honest, we need to incorporate more technology between our dens. We should have found this much sooner. We appreciate your discovery. All of the Magani need to use more technology. Bo crossed his arms in front of his chest. Good riddance, one of the Hobbs mumbled. What does a magical world come to when we are considering using Dane technology? Can't we all get along without talking to each other constantly? Is it safe to use the Dane internet for magical reasons? Another asked. There is an internet for us, you know, Bo said. Really? The M-Web, Zerok said. The magical World Wide Web, if you want to use the long version. The centaurs use the M-Web? Alcott asked. Zerok snorted. I'm sure it's the same across for most Magani. This combination of technology and magic that's been spreading the last few years is a hit with you young ones. Zerok reached into a pouch on his waist and brought out something that looked like a pane of glass that was slim in the side of his palm. This is the newest thing. It's called a choir. It was Joseph's turn to snort. He shook his head. I'm glad Isaac wanted to keep technology to a minimum here. It's quaint, I'll give you that, Bo said, and it worked for Audrey's business too, but chimes are changing. We should get one for the castle, one of the younger Hobbs said. I can make us one of our own, Tobias said. There's no need to go all commercial. Isaac wouldn't approve, Joseph said. Isaac is gone now. Get one or make one, it's fine, Charlotte said loudly. She sat back and played with the hem of her shirt. Could they stop talking about her parents now? Did they not know it still hurt? She blinked back her tears and looked at the map of the nearest collection of kidnappings. She would go, of course, so why hadn't she offered? Was it fear? She tugged at the hem. Or was it hope that her parents might contact her here? She sighed. She couldn't spend her entire life waiting on something that might not happen, but desperation was a noisy bother. It drowned out the logic that attempted to calm her. Where will I best serve? Sebastian asked. Zerok stared at him thoughtfully. We could use you in both places, to be honest, but I won't have you on a battlefield if that's not what you want. Sebastian shook his head no. He clasped his hands together and stared down the floor. Joseph breathed a noisy sigh of relief. Charlotte stopped playing with her hair and looked up at Zerok. I'll go. Are you sure? Joseph asked her. You've been unsteady lately. She's ready, Zerok said, and she is tonight and tomorrow to clear her mind. We've already lost Isaac and Audrey. We can't lose Charlotte. I say she stays here to help protect her home, one of the Hobbs said. It's up to her, Basil interjected. But what will happen to us if we lose her? Isaac made sure we'd be taken care of, Joseph said quietly. Remember, we were already facing this situation with Isaac aging and Charlotte possibly having her memory wiped and living as a Dane. It's taken care of. He looked over at Charlotte. But I would rather you stay, Lottie. I have to go, Joseph. Then you will, Bo said. You take care of her, Joseph said sternly. She can take care of herself, but yes, I'll watch out for her. His wings ruffled. Well, that takes care of that, Zarok interrupted. Does anybody have anything else to share? The room was silent. Meeting adjourned. Get some sleeps and ready yourselves. Charlotte waited until it was only herself and Bo left in the room. She sat down by him and placed her arm on his arm. He patted her arm with his other arm. She pulled his arm into her lap and traced her fingers over his scars. Wingard? Yes, Locklear. She leaned into his arm. I'd like to spend tomorrow with you. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. I'd like that too. Can we go someplace? She slipped her hand into his hand and looked up at him. Can we fly? Bo leaned forward and brushed his lips against her lips. We will fly, Lottie. And there you go. Tomorrow I'll be back and try to do 15, 16, and 17. Thanks, guys. Bye.